Welcome to the Heart Smart Reset. I'm your instructor, David Hatton. So let's get right into it and let's just focus on the anatomy. So this is our heart right here. That's what it sort of runs the show. It's going to be the one that pumps the blood. It's going to be where a lot of the problems do occur when we're looking at cardiovascular events. But we also want to look at the vessels in the heart, or even more, the vessels in the body, because it is a system. They work together. If something happens in the heart, something's going to happen in the vessels. So if we're looking at the heart, we're looking at the vessels, and then we're looking at cardiovascular risk. What are some of the symptoms that we want to be aware of? So if we're looking at the very beginning symptoms, we're looking at, lack of energy, easily winded. Maybe there is a little bit of numbness and tingling going down into the toes and the fingers, which can indicate there's lack of blood flow. If we're getting into the more severe symptoms, well, we're looking at these symptoms right here. We can start to get a little bit of anxious or anxiety. We're looking at nausea. We're looking at potentially some pain in the chest and going down the left arm. There's so many different symptoms that we need to be aware of. But when we're looking at the heart as a general system, we just want to remember that this is not something that happens overnight. This happens over decades. So what we do today is going to predict what's going to happen in the future. So if we're really wanting to get our heart back on track, we should start doing things now. And so this is the progression that we're looking at. So if we're getting into the arteries, and this could be in the heart, so some of these coronary arteries, it can be into just some of the vessels throughout the rest of the body. But if we're starting on a clean slate, our vessels are going to be clean. So we're going to have our red blood vessels here just going all the way through. There's going to be no blockage. It's just going to be able to function like it should. It's going to be smooth. It's going to be fluid. Nothing's going to stop it. What you can see here is those small little dots. That's cholesterol that naturally flows through the body. And cholesterol is a very important part of the body. It helps to run a lot of our systems. It's what all our hormones are actually made of. So it is a very important part. But it's just one of those where it's important to a certain extent. So as we go through, we're jumping up to stage 2, and we can see some of that cholesterol has now found its way into the vessel. This is where we're starting to get that long-term buildup. So we're not going to see the symptoms. We're just going to have a buildup. It's going to start. It's going to progress. Right now, we wouldn't be experiencing or even be thinking about a cardiovascular event because those symptoms aren't going to happen until we hit this stage 3 here, where we start to get a large plaque formation. So that's when a lot of that cholesterol gets into the blood vessel, into the wall, and starts to impede the flow of blood. So as we can see, we're getting less blood flow because we have a narrowing of the artery. This is where we're going to start to see some of those symptoms. So this is going to be the first one where we are going to notice we're getting that fatigue. We're getting potentially some erectile dysfunction in men. Our stamina is going to be lower because we're not getting oxygen everywhere that we need to as fast as we want it. So when we hit here, it's definitely a warning sign for us that we need to be paying attention to the heart. We need to be paying attention to the system. But why is this so important? Why is cholesterol so important? Well, let's look up here. We have 2 types of cholesterol. We have an LDL and we have an HDL. LDL actually holds on to cholesterol and drags it and deposits it into the blood vessel wall. So that's what we're seeing here, the plaque formation. LDL is actually the one doing that. That's not good. That's not what we want. HDL, on the other hand, is going to be taking that cholesterol that's circulating in the blood or even into the plaque itself, and it's going to take it all the way to the liver. Once it's at the liver, HDL is going to release the cholesterol. The liver is going to take it. It's going to utilize it. It's going to go into energy, or it can go into hormone production, or it's going to be excreted. So HDL is going to do a good job of getting rid of excess cholesterol, so it's not going to be put into our blood vessel wall. So when we're looking at the two, we always have to remember that LDL is the bad cholesterol, HDL is the good cholesterol. So this is really important if we're looking at a blood test. If you get a blood test done, you're looking at your LDL, your HDL, your total cholesterol, your triglycerides, you can now start to understand what is happening behind the scenes or within the body. So again, when we get LDL sort of in like an excess situation, that's where our biggest risk factor for having a plaque formation is going to occur. And one of the worst things that can happen is that if this starts to get so big, it's going to rupture, and then we're going to get a big piece of fat floating through the vessels, and that's where we can get a lot of those blocks in those smaller arteries. So especially if you're coming up here, we get a blockage, that's your stereotypical heart attack. So that's what we want to prevent. That's the end result that we definitely want to prevent. And so what can we do? This is a fun part. There's so many things that we can actually do to help reduce our risk factor, and simply altering our levels of LDL and HDL is gonna be one of the best things that we can do. So how do we do that? One thing is looking at your nutrition. If you're having a really fat-filled diet, and I'm talking the bad fats, we're talking about you're always going to the drive-through, you've got a lot of those burgers, fries, chips, all those trans fats that we just want to reduce, that will naturally lower your LDL levels. So the next thing that we can do is we can elevate our HDL levels. There's a couple different ways that we can do that. Nutrition, fantastic. It's going to help. Fish is a great way to help increase your HDL levels. These are some of the basic things that we can start to do and just get our health risk or our cardiovascular down simply, effectively, efficiently, just using nutrition on its own. So by simply targeting these two, we can decrease our cardiovascular risk. And this is all just focusing on LDL, HDL. If we want to go past it, we can also accelerate or decrease our risk factor by adding in other things such as water, supplementation. We can look at helping to elevate HDL levels using specific supplements, decreasing LDL levels using other supplements, looking at specific diets that will help to increase your LDL, decrease HDL, increase your HDL, decrease your LDL, because that's what we want to do. But there's a lot of options that we have. If we're looking at specifically away from the HDL and the LDL, and we want to increase our fluidity in our bloodstream, that's another way that we can reduce the risk of a rupture of a plaque. Because if we have a lot of friction in the blood, that increases the risk of a plaque actually breaking off, because between that two friction pieces, that's where we're going to get an opening, that's where we're going to get a cut, and that's going to be where our cholesterol that's been in there in a plaque formation to break off. So if we're doing that, another simple way is water. Why are we not drinking enough water, or why are we not helping to lubricate the blood, thinning it down to make sure that it's flowing freely? And so when we do get a plaque, and we want to reduce it, ultimately we want to reduce that down, but at the beginning we want to make sure that this blood is fluid, it's flowing. So these are some of the basic tips that we can start now to make sure that our heart health is going to be good in the future. And again, these tips are going to start the pathway. Nothing's going to happen overnight. If you get a test today and you're like, my LDL is super high, you start implementing all these things, by tomorrow it's not going to be any different. It's going to take some time. As this progression is a decade thing, the reversal, it can definitely happen. You can reverse, which is amazing, but it is going to take some time to get it down and back to where we want to see it. So thanks for tuning in. This is the Heart Health. Definitely, I would say this is a great place to start. There's so much more that you can do, but this is really exciting. Start with what you've heard today. If you really like this, keep doing research. There's so much more you can do. But definitely start thinking heart smart so that you can be active. You can feel like you're 25 when you're 65. You can do everything that you used to do, and then you're just going to reduce all your symptoms, which is amazing. So thanks again for tuning in.